Hello, welcome back to our discussion of HTML, this time advanced text formatting. So our reference, the Mozilla Development Network, search for advanced text formatting. You can follow the URL as well. The objective this time, further study of text formatting. It's not really advanced, it's just more. Some of these don't affect the layout, but they're important for screen readers to interpret the information correctly to their user. So we'll go over description lists, which is a term plus a definition. Quotations, which allow attributions, abbreviations, which allow an attribute with the full phrase, addresses, computer code, and then dates and times. So I have the HTML on the right here in my Visual Studio Code, and the result over here in the browser, localhost 3000. So the heading 1, text formatting, and then it gets right into description lists where you can see the description term and then the description definition. So the description list is the overall element here, and then nested within that, description type and description definition. This would allow the screen reader to call this out, and it also allows the visual appearance of the page to reflect the meaning underneath this. The next element we'll look at is quotations. So this uses the block quote. Here we are, quotations with the block quote, normal paragraph here, and then a block quote which includes the entire thing. This allows a citation to be given. The weakness of this is the citation never shows up in the HTML or the browser's appearance of it. Now I added to this example to show you how you can add it to. I added a couple of things to this actually that allow you to give a visual impression of the block quote here, which is by doing the title attribute here, we'll get the pop-up here. Otherwise, the citation is invisible in the view part of the browser. No doubt, a screen reader could pull that out. Here, there's also an additional tag you can put inside of block quote, and that's a footer. And that footer is another way you could say what the source of this element is. Instead of giving the HTML, I just said MDN and on block quotes here. So a couple of different ways to citation. This is the official attribute, but again, its weakness is that it doesn't show up visually. So I did the title and the footer element here to overcome that. Abbreviations does affect the visibility of it here. You can see that the abbreviation where I've marked up with the abbreviation tag here and the title hypertext markup language, you can see what that does. It both visibly changes the look of it, underlines it with dots, so you can pull this up and look at the full definition of that. The next is the address block, and here you can block up address tags again. Some meaningful markup, it puts it in to italics on the browser, and we can see the markup there. Simply put the address inside that. Then computer code. So computer code a little bit tricky with normal markup. It has a couple of things that we need to consider. Computer code in computer text editors is oftentimes Courier or some other what's called a monospace font or a non-proportional font. A monospace or non-proportional font means that each letter takes up the same amount of horizontal space as any other letter. So a W takes up the same amount of space as an I. This comes from typewriters. So a typewriter, mechanical machine, doesn't have a CPU in it, so it can't do what we call a proportionate font. A proportionate font is what we normally use, and you can see proportionate fonts everywhere here. Here, the Q, for example, takes up more space, more horizontal space than the I does. Well, if you do that in computer code, the text just doesn't line up. It doesn't look proper. It doesn't format properly for a computer programmer. So we use monospace fonts or non-proportional fonts within computer code. So this I, for example, takes up as much horizontal space as this M does. That's not true, again, of proportional fonts, which is mostly what we use here in these heading elements. Now, these non-proportional fonts allow our code to line up column-wise, which is important. So this computer code is actually marked up with a couple of tags. The pre-tag says this is pre-formatted text. So within the pre-tag, white space is actually preserved in the HTML. We've learned that HTML, in normal flow of HTML, one space is meaningful as a space between words, but more than one horizontal or vertical space is just thrown away when it comes to rendering it in the browser. Well, if you have text within a pre-tag, then the white space is not thrown out and is actually represented in the rendered HTML in the browser, as you can see here. So that's what the pre-tag does. The code tag puts it in the monospace font that we want. So two things: the pre-tag, preserve white space; the code tag, use a monospace font. And then the other thing we do, we mark this up with a var here, so this variable is called out. So that's how you can get computer code to look proper in a browser. Here, just for contrast, I pasted in the same formatted text from the computer code, but removed the pre-tag and the code tag, and you can see the white spaces, the excess white space is thrown away, and we have a normal serifed font that's a proportional font, not a non-proportional font as this is. The final tag we need to look at is the time tag. Now, the time tag has no effect on the visual appearance in the browser. However, it adds some meta information via the attribute date/time. Human beings have a wide variety of ways of writing dates and times, and with given enough context, a human reader can figure out a date/time in a lot of different formats, way more flexibly than a computer reader can read time. So that's what's the important part here. This is one tag that doesn't affect the visual appearance. However, it adds the additional meta information here of the date/time in a prefet. There's several of these formats that the computer can read, but there's still a finite handful of them when you can embed date and time information in a format that is meaningful to a computer reader. And that's what's important about the time attribute. Pardon me, the time element. So we've reached our objectives. We saw a description list, how you can do terms and definitions, quotations, abbreviations, addresses, computer dates and times. All of these have formatting that can be done with conventional tags where you don't call out specific things like this. But it's really important to add that extra piece of information so that screen readers can interpret the information that's normally only visually presented. So, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.